Who would have thought this could actually happen? Ottawa has just sent an unmistakable message to Washington. While the world is focused on trade tensions, Canada has been quietly finalizing a $19 billion defense agreement with Sweden. Not Lockheed Martin's F-35, not American technology, but Gripen fighter jets and GlobalEye surveillance aircraft from Saab. That raises the real question. Is this a smart strategic move or a high-stakes political gamble? In August 2025, as analysts were still tracking Canada's $27.7 billion F-35 negotiations, Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a full review of the entire program. Just weeks later, Sweden's Saab unveiled an unexpected proposal: 72 Gripen E fighter jets, 6 GlobalEye airborne surveillance aircraft, and a commitment to create 12,600 jobs inside Canada. Total value approximately $19 billion. Industry Minister Melanie Joly made Ottawa's position clear. Canada, she said, must retain control over its defense contracts regardless of what Washington thinks. But this story goes far beyond the numbers. At its core, it's a struggle between sovereignty and alliance between technological independence and strategic dependence. To understand why Canada is even considering this option, we need to look at how fast the geopolitical landscape is shifting. The war in Ukraine has entered its third year. Russia has expanded its military footprint in the Arctic, building new bases along its northern coastline. Melting ice faster than previously expected is opening new shipping routes, but also creating security gaps that never existed before. And that's only half the story. The other half lies in US-Canada trade tensions under President Trump. Tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and automobiles have shaken entire industries. According to a Canadian Department of Finance report released in January 2026, these tariffs could cost Canada more than $30 billion in the first year alone. Ottawa is actively looking to reduce its exposure to decisions made in Washington, and defense procurement has become one of the most powerful political tools available. That's where Sweden enters the picture. In March 2024, Stockholm officially joined NATO, ending more than 200 years of neutrality and reshaping the security balance in the Arctic. Sweden isn't just NATO's newest member, it brings deep expertise in operating in extreme environments, advanced sensor technologies, and most importantly, no political pressure from Washington. In August 2025, Canada and Sweden signed a defense and trade cooperation framework, clearing the path for much larger agreements. International analysts see this as the emergence of a new alliance of middle powers: Sweden, Canada, Norway, and Denmark, cooperating on defense technology and Arctic survivability. Then in December 2025, Canada joined the European Union's SAFE initiative, a move widely interpreted as a clear signal of Ottawa's strategy to diversify its defense partnerships. But few people are talking about the real driving force behind all of this. The 12,600 jobs Saab is promising aren't just numbers on a slide deck. Their proposal breaks everything down: production hubs, local partners, and phased implementation. 9,000 jobs tied to the Gripen program, and 3,600 more linked to GlobalEye. By comparison, Lockheed Martin currently works with about 30 Canadian suppliers in the global F-35 supply chain, supporting roughly 2,000 jobs. Saab isn't offering a tweak to the existing model. They're offering something fundamentally different. Instead of remaining a secondary parts supplier in the global production chain, Canada would become the assembly, integration, and maintenance hub for Gripen in North America. Saab has proposed partnerships with IMP Aerospace, GE Aviation, CAE, and Paraton to build manufacturing and support centers in Ontario and Quebec. Most notably, GlobalEye is built on the Bombardier Global 6500 platform and aircraft already manufactured in Canada, creating a natural industrial link between the two countries. But this is about far more than assembling aircraft. Saab has committed to investing in 4 strategic technology centers: a Gripen Center in Montreal focused on systems integration, a cyber resilience center in Toronto dedicated to cybersecurity, a sensor center in Vancouver developing advanced sensor technologies, and an aerospace R&D center in Montreal researching next-generation aviation solutions. In an interview with Bloomberg Industry Minister Melanie Joly, put it bluntly, "We believe we can use military procurement to get more." Economic analysts argue that this model could transform Canada into an independent defense technology hub rather than an extension of the US industrial supply chain. If successful, it would mark a breakthrough in Canada's defense industrial strategy. strategy. But Washington has not been silent. GlobalEye is not a conventional surveillance aircraft. It is Sweden's most advanced airborne early warning and command and control system, built on the Bombardier Global 6500 and equipped with Saab's Arieye ER radar. Its capabilities go far beyond tracking hostile aircraft. GlobalEye can monitor naval vessels, observe shifts in Arctic ice flows, detect illegal transport activity, and coordinate fighter operations across vast Arctic airspace. For Canada, this is exactly the tool needed to assert sovereignty in a region that is heating up by the day. The Gripen E, equipped with the Raven ES-05 radar and IRST infrared sensors, is designed to operate in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. Its ability to take off from short runways, even stretches of highway, makes it ideally suited for remote bases in northern Canada. Lower maintenance costs and shorter pilot training timelines are additional advantages frequently highlighted by defense analysts. But those very strengths are what concern Washington. U.S. Ambassador to Canada Pete Hoekstra has publicly warned that operating two different fighter platforms would be extremely costly for a country Canada's size. And the message didn't stop there. Diplomatic sources say Washington has delivered private warnings to Ottawa, cautioning of serious consequences if Canada alters its signed F-35 agreement. The pressure isn't coming only from government channels. Lockheed Martin is accelerating talks to expand industrial benefits for Canada, hoping to keep Ottawa firmly inside the F-35 program. U.S. defense experts continue to stress that the F-35 is not just a fighter jet, it is the backbone of NATO and NORAD's integrated combat network. Walking away from the F-35, they argue, would mean Canada isolating itself from the collective defense system. But international analysts are now asking a different question. Could pressure from Washington actually backfire, pushing Canada even closer to Sweden? This is no longer just a debate about fighter jets. It's a question about the nature of national sovereignty in the 21st century. When defense technology has become so complex that no country can fully produce it on its own, is true independence still possible, or have alliances become the only viable path to survival? Ottawa is facing a dilemma with no perfect solution. In 2022, after decades of delays, Canada finally signed a contract to purchase 88 F-35A fighter jets valued at 19 billion Canadian dollars. But by June 2025, Canada's Auditor General released a report showing that costs had surged to $27.7 billion, a 46% increase over the original estimate. When infrastructure and weapons are fully accounted for, total costs could reach $33 billion. Canada is committed to purchasing the first 16 aircraft scheduled for delivery to Luke Air Force Base in Arizona in 2026 for pilot training before returning to Canada in 2028. But the remaining 72 jets, that's where Prime Minister Carney ordered a reassessment, opening the door to the idea of a mixed fleet. Supporters argue this model offers the perfect balance. A limited number of F-35s would preserve fifth-generation stealth capabilities for NATO and NORAD missions, while Gripen aircraft would handle daily Arctic patrols at roughly 1/6 the operating cost of an F-35. Diversifying suppliers would also reduce Canada's dependence on a single company or a single country. But opposition is coming from those who know the military best. Former Chief of the Royal Canadian Air Force Tom Lawson, along with a group of senior military officials, has publicly opposed the mixed fleet plan. Their argument is straightforward: operating two fundamentally different aircraft systems would double the burden, not just financially, but in manpower. Training pilots for two platforms, maintaining separate spare parts supply chains, and building parallel maintenance infrastructures would strain resources Canada simply does not have. There's also the question of combat capability. While the Gripen E is an outstanding Generation 4.5 fighter, the F-35 is a true fifth-generation aircraft with stealth sensor fusion and network-centric warfare capabilities that have no direct equivalent. Military experts point out that Canada's potential adversaries, Russia with the Su-57 and China with the J-20 and J-35, are already fielding fifth-generation technology. Falling back to Generation 4.5 under these conditions could represent a serious strategic risk. So why does the Carney government continue to pursue the Gripen option? The answer lies in politics, not military doctrine. Prime Minister Mark Carney took office in March 2025 as Canada's economy was under intense pressure from US tariffs. He needed a decisive move to demonstrate that Canada can shape its own future without relying on goodwill from Washington. Defense procurement became the perfect political instrument. Industry Minister Melanie Joly has repeatedly stated in public that we don't control President Trump, but we do control our defense contracts. She has argued that Canada has has not received sufficient industrial benefits from the F-35 program and has actively pushed Saab's proposal instead. The objective is clear: create domestic jobs to offset the economic damage caused by the US trade war. The Carney government's diversification strategy goes well beyond defense. Ottawa is deepening ties with Europe, joining initiatives such as Rearm Europe and SAFE, while actively seeking new trade partners to reduce reliance on the US market. Gripen and Global Eye have become symbols of that vision, a Canada that is more independent, more technologically self-reliant, and more strategically autonomous. But as of January 21st, 2026, Canada has still not made a final decision. Deadlines have been pushed back multiple times, and no one knows which path Ottawa will ultimately choose: a full commitment to the F-35, a mixed fleet, or a complete shift to Gripen. Stakeholders are locked in a tense standoff. The Department of National Defense remains firmly behind the F-35, citing its irreplaceable fifth-generation capabilities for NATO and NORAD missions. The Industry Ministry prioritizes jobs and economic returns, leaning toward Gripen. Military leadership recommends staying with the F-35 to avoid operational risk. Meanwhile, public opinion polls show a deeply divided Canadian electorate, shaped in large part by attitudes toward President Trump. Pressure is coming from every direction. Lockheed Martin is scrambling to expand its industrial commitments in hopes of keeping Canada inside the F-35 program. Saab has intensified its lobbying, hosting technology demonstrations, and meeting directly with Canadian lawmakers. Washington continues applying diplomatic pressure to preserve the original agreement. And there's a lesser-known detail: both Sweden and Ukraine want Canada to buy Gripen because higher production volumes would lower unit costs for both countries. So what should Canada weigh at this crossroads? Three core factors will shape the decision, and none of them are simple. Military capability: the F-35 is a fifth-generation stealth aircraft designed to integrate seamlessly with NORAD and NATO. The Gripen E, while an excellent generation 4.5 fighter, falls behind potential adversaries on paper. Russia is fielding the Su-57. China has the J-20 and J-35. The question is whether Canada can afford that technological gap over the next 30 to 40 years. Cost Canada has invested in the F-35 program since 1997, spending more than $600 million on research and development. Gripen's operating costs are significantly lower, roughly $8,000 per flight hour compared to $35,000 to $47,000 for the F-35, but running two fleets in parallel could ultimately cost more than maintaining a single unified system. From an industrial perspective, 30 Canadian companies are already part of the global F-35 supply chain, supporting roughly 2,000 jobs and long-term export opportunities. Reducing F-35 orders could put those contracts at risk. By contrast, Gripen promises 12,600 direct jobs and the possibility of building an independent domestic defense industry. But the question remains, will those promises translate into reality or remain numbers on paper? Canada has committed to reaching 2% of GDP in defense spending by 2026, with plans to increase spending by $82 billion over the next 5 years. Meanwhile, the current CF-18 Hornet fleet is aging rapidly and urgently needs replacement. Time is not on Ottawa's side. When security and independence can no longer move in lockstep, when cutting-edge technology collides with industrial sovereignty, when alliances clash with national interest, Canada finds itself facing one of the most difficult defense decisions in its history. There is no perfect choice, only carefully calculated trade-offs. And the final question isn't which aircraft Canada will choose. It's this: what is the price of independence, and is Ottawa willing to pay it? If you want to follow in-depth analysis of geopolitics and defense that few others are talking about, hit like and subscribe. This video is for analytical and informational purposes only, based on publicly available sources. It does not contain classified information or represent the official position of any government or organization. Any references to countries, companies, or individuals are used solely to illustrate the broader political and economic context.